On September the 15th, 2024, the government let out 1,750 prisoners early because of the so-called prisons crisis. Convicts became eligible for release after serving only 40% of their sentences, and some were literally popping champagne corks outside. Starmer claimed he had no choice because of overcrowding, but assured us that no seriously violent or sexual criminals or domestic abusers would be included. The scheme has continued for 7 months. In October, 1,200 were let go in England and Wales. On the assumption that there have been around 1,000 a month, the number of released now must total 7,000 or 8,000. Writing about this in September, I observed that there was an ideological side to the decision. The prison minister, Lord Timpson, has made statements against mass incarceration, believing in notions of rehabilitation instead. The Liberal left in general has a record of such approaches. I, on the other hand, was in favour of building new prisons, redeveloping existing ones, and using temporary facilities to hold convicts. Expensive, yes, but in the circumstances a priority above all others, certainly Ukraine and net zero. Labour have now announced some prison building targets, but still the criminals come. I warned in the video that it was almost certain there would be reoffending and somebody would get hurt. Sadly, this happened, and a member of the public was killed by a released prisoner, the very same day he was let out. On September the 19th, 26-year-old Liam Matthews walked free from HMP Holme House in Stockton-on-Tees. He had been convicted of manslaughter in June 2023, which resulted from a street fight. His partners in crime had been found guilty of murder. Not seriously violent, eh? In actual fact, so long as their sentences were under 4 years, violent prisoners were considered for release. Matthews had received a sentence of 22 months. Firstly, is that it? For killing someone? Lucy Connolly received 31 months for posting unwisely on X. Matthews was released after 14 months. Now, it is common for prisoners to be let out on licence halfway through their sentence, depending on their behaviour inside. He had, we should point out, served more than that. However, the decision to release him was still part of Starmer's new scheme. Quite probably, the government pressure upon prison authorities to bring their populations down influenced the decision, and they may not have been as stringent as they normally would have been. Well, the prison population came down by 1 all right, but the population of the local area also came down by 1. Upon release, Matthews was given a standard £96 grant from the prison. He visited his probation officer and the job centre. He then went to the pub before wanting something harder, and used his grant to buy crack cocaine. High on the drug, he later became involved in some kind of gang attack on 26-year-old Lewis Bell. The dispute was apparently over drugs. What else? Matthews stamped on the victim and brandished a chisel as his 2 associates stabbed Bell to death. For the second time in his life, Matthews was convicted of manslaughter, along with another of the gang. The third attacker was found guilty of murder. They are yet to be sentenced and were remanded in custody. So back to prison the scumbag went. Under Keir Starmer, though, how long is he likely to remain there? Other freed criminals have reoffended. In February, Amari Ward was convicted of sexually assaulting a woman in Sittingbourne. He groped a woman's thigh outside the railway station. This, again, was on the very day of his release. Ward had been in prison for breaking a restraining order and had not been convicted of a sexual offence before. His victim, in her statement to court, said she felt like a scapegoat for the early release scheme. Sadly, there are sure to be other such incidents of reoffending, which will come to light throughout the next few years. Indeed, the Inspector of Prisons in England and Wales said in September it was inevitable that without the correct support and accommodation, released prisoners would reoffend or breach their licence conditions. Ward was one of 37 freed prisoners that had been convicted of breaking restraining orders, put in place because they were harassing individuals, presumably ex-partners. Under the 1997 Harassment Act, such an offence was not considered domestic abuse. This changed in 2020 as part of the Sentencing Act. Because the prisoners had been convicted under the previous legislation, their status as domestic abusers was missed, and they were wrongly released. Most of the 37 have reportedly been returned to prison. As of September 2024, 5 of them remained at large, with the authorities searching for them. It is yet another black mark against the government's rash and ill-advised policy. As mentioned, Labour have since pledged to create prison places. They say they will aim for 14,600 extra spaces by 2031, which will cost £10 billion. Only £2.3 billion has been pledged so far. This all seems optimistic, to say the least. The Policy Exchange think tank estimated 50,000 prison spaces would be required in the next 10 years to properly protect the public, including 10,900 to deal with new offenders in the next 5 years. A so-called super prison, begun in 2021 under the Johnson government, opened in March. Millsike Prison in York can hold 1,468 convicts and has already taken in 200. It cost £400 million. You'll be very glad to hear it is powered by solar panels and heat pumps and painted in soft pastel colours to encourage good behaviour. Just to number crunch a little, to make 14,000 spaces, we will need about 9 Millsike-sized prisons. If they all cost the same as Millsike, the price will come to £3.6 billion. If it is to be done by the start of 2031, we will have to build 2 prisons a year and spend £800 million a year. Labour have made a start by approving the construction of HMP Garth in Lancashire, which will hold 1,700 convicts. The Tories, of course, failed to create the spaces they pledged. May promised 10,000 in 2016 and Johnson another 10,000 in 2019. Only 6,000 were provided in the end. Quite possibly, Labour will fall into the same trap, given that the same sclerotic and expensive processes apply. With any luck, this government will perform better, and the prison spaces programme will see the dangerous release policy be wound down. Eventually, after billions of pounds have been spent and perhaps hundreds of people have been hurt, abused or killed. On the other hand, the Justice Minister Shabana Mahmood has expressed an interest in following the liberal Texas model, whereby serious criminals are released following good conduct, training and education. This follows a review written by the former Conservative Minister David Gauke. In this case, even more potential re-offenders will be walking among us. These numbers are being added to every day on the beaches of Dover. Clown World continues. These are from my article series Don't Vote Labour Again, published on my Substack, link in description. I usually split each subject into smaller episodes. In the description, you will find links to the other episodes. You can also check out my playlist to find every single one. Please support me in my work by subscribing to this channel, subscribing free to my Substack, and by liking and sharing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon as we plumb the depths of this dreadful government.